I used to absolutely hate phone calls. I've spent so much time staring at my phone, filled with anxiety, seeing an incoming call and just not wanting to take it. The self-doubt around my ability to take a call would end up crippling my self-confidence, and I would just avoid them altogether. Making a call was even worse. Questions like, what if I embarrass myself? What do I even say? And does this person even want to speak to me? Would just play on and on in my mind, and I would just never ever want to make an outgoing call. If this sounds at all relatable to you, then I want to share how I've been able to get rid of this fear. Looking back, I now honestly can't even believe that I used to feel this way. I make tens of calls a day very easily, whether they're personal or they're at work, and I have very little anxiety about it, very little uncertainty, and really small resistance towards actually making the call. Now, obviously, this change didn't happen overnight. I spent years and years being afraid of phone calls, and so it did take a lot of work, but I just want to kind of share some of the mindset shifts and also some of the simple strategies that I used that helped me get over this fear. First, let's just cover why myself and so many others are scared of phone calls in the first place, because in reality, it's just usually a simple conversation that takes a few minutes and is really easy. Like that's what most of the phone calls boil down to, and yet still there's this big fear over it and a lot of pressure related around it. So I think one of the scariest parts about phone calls is there is no visual cues. You can't really see how someone else is feeling or their expressions, so you have to rely solely based on what they're saying and how they're saying it. And for me personally, this makes it a lot more difficult to grasp how someone is feeling. And I really dislike having that taken away because I rely a lot on visual cues. The next thing that I think would cause a lot of fear, at least it did for me, is the pressure to perform. Unlike writing an email or sending a message, it's in real time. Someone's on the phone, someone is waiting for you to respond. So feels like there's a lot of pressure to get through the conversation or to know what you're talking about. Something else that adds to the fear of phone calls is uncertainty and intrusion. When you get a phone call that you're not expecting, it's unscheduled, you can start to worry about what it might be about. You can really overthink that phone call. And as well, when you're making outgoing calls, at least for me, I felt like, well, what if I'm intruding? What if this is a bad time? And, make all those kind of little excuses, even though in reality, if you do call someone at a bad time, you're just going to say, hey, they're going to say, hey, this is a bad time. And that's it. But still, that intrusion is at least was a big factor in me not wanting to make a lot of calls. The last few factors that I think make phone calls really scary is the fear of judgment and overthinking. So obviously, before you take a call, you're going to overthink it and be afraid of judgment. And then even after a call, I would notice that I would really focus on what I said or embarrass things, or if I didn't articulate myself correctly, I would be really judgmental to myself on that. And then obviously I would project that mindset onto others and assume that they're thinking the same things about me, when in reality, they're obviously not. But those are just some of the factors that I think make phone calls really scary. So again, if you think that's something that affects you, then I'm going to share some tips and mindset shifts that really helped me get over that fear. First, let's just quickly go over some quick tips. Now, the first one would be to just make calls. Obviously, exposure to it is going to be the quickest way that you're going to feel more confident, be a bit more certain in yourself, and just really build that reinforcement of knowing that you have the ability to make phone calls or to take calls. So definitely trying to do it as much as you can and pushing through the fear is the quickest route to do that. Obviously, that's really difficult, so the next few tips will actually help you make those calls. The next one for me is using the 3-2-1 rule, which I'm sure that's an actual strategy. I don't know, it's just something that I've used personally myself, where it's just, I'll see an incoming call or I'll have the number that I need to dial, and I'm ready to go. I know what I need to say, and I know what's happening, and I'll just take a deep breath in, big breath out, and then I'll count myself down from 3. As soon as I hit 1 or I hit go, just answer the call or I start dialing the number. And for me personally, that works really well because, I dial the number and it's like, that's it. There's no going back. So I've already gotten over the hardest bit, which is actually just doing making the call or answering the call. And now it's on to just having the call. So for me, counting myself down really, really helped me. And honestly, I use that kind of rule in a lot of different situations where I have anxiety about performing the action. So 3, 2, 1, answer the call. Works every time for me. The last tip that I have would be to practice speaking out loud. So if this mainly applies to, making outgoing calls, you need to call someone, you know what you need to say, but you're still not feeling sure of yourself, the next step would be to just practice speaking out loud. Read a few sentences from a book, or even better, have a conversation with someone in person. Just build up a little bit of confidence knowing that you can actually speak out loud and it's not that difficult, and you can have a conversation with someone. I think that makes it a lot easier to actually then go and hit that call, like to answer the call or to give the call, because you've already given yourself a bit of confidence in knowing that you can actually have a conversation. So it takes a little bit of that fear away. Okay, next, let's move on to 2 mindset shifts that really helped me in my ability to make calls and my performance on the phone. And the first one would be that there's no need to rush. Again, because of that anxiety and that stress of making the call, it can feel very overwhelming and can be a bit racy. So for me personally, when I was on the phone, I used to hate the silence or the gaps in people speaking because it would just drive me insane. And I found that trying to remind myself that I can take time, I can pause, that I don't have to rush through the phone call makes a big difference. Not only in just my confidence during the call, but also in what I'm saying and how well I'm articulating myself. Obviously, if you're rushing through a sentence, you're not thinking about your response, it's most of the time not going to be exactly what you want to say. So taking a little bit of time before you respond to something works really well. You can do this in a few different ways. You can just pause and then keep speaking once you've figured out what you want to say. Or if it's something that's really stumped you and you have to think about it for a while, or you're a bit scared to answer, like let's say someone asks you a hard question or asks you to make a decision, you can just say, that's a great question, I'll get back to you on that, or I'll need to give it some more thought, or anything along those lines, just to buy yourself a bit of extra time. And there's no reason why anyone else would judge you on that. And I think it's a much better option than saying something that you don't actually mean. So there's no need to rush. Just take your time and don't stress about these silent gaps because they're normal. The last mindset shift, and the most important one for me, was to realize that no one is judging me like I judge myself. Just like any other overthinker, I really overly criticize myself and my performance. And then when I started to kind of question why that was, I started to try and think about how I reacted to others making a mistake. If someone stumbles over their words on a phone call with me, or if they say something slightly embarrassing or awkward, or they say something that doesn't make sense, do I harshly criticize them or really belittle them? And the answer to that was no. Usually I would, laugh it off or try and make them feel more comfortable, or not even give it any thought at all. So once I realized that that's how I treated other people's mistakes, I started questioning why I was thinking that others would treat me differently. So I was pushing my insecurities onto other people and imagining that they were going to think those things about me. Reality is, they probably don't give a shit. If I say something a little awkward and correct myself, they're not going to remember it. If I don't even correct myself, they're still not going to remember it. Like, it's not a big deal. So realizing that I was the only person that was going to judge me that harshly made it way easier to take calls or, do outgoing calls. Just, even cold calls now. It's way easier knowing that I'm going to be the worst judgment. And I already know what I'm going to say. So, there goes the uncertainty. So those are just a few quick tips and some mindset shifts that really helped me get better at phone calls. I'm introverted in nature, so speaking out loud and having calls like that isn't really my cup of tea, but this is how I've managed to actually enjoy it or get much better at it. So hopefully that's relatable to some of you. Obviously, it is a fear that plagues many of us, but it really isn't that scary. And once you have a lot more exposure, phone calls will be easy. Thanks for watching, guys.